Okay, so where to begin? When I was asked if I would do this interview with you, of course I did. There was not a beat between me saying yes to this. And then I was told there was only going to be about 15 minutes an hour, and I was like, oh no, what are we going to have to edit out? Because, I mean, I think a journey through your career, 30-year career, is really like a journey through the heartland, I think, of cinema. So I think your career takes us right through the heart of some of the most important moments of cinema. So we're going to touch base on some of those, I think. But I'm also just really interested to hear about you and your process and what sustained that career. So we all know this, but just a few stop-off moments. You have worked with some of the leading directors in America and the world, from Milos Forman to Lisa Cholodenko, and some of the greatest actors in the world, and really with ensemble casting has been quite, I think, pivotal to your career. So people like Angelica Houston, to the new crop like Greta Gerwig. So you've really had that kind of range of people that you've been able to work with and work through. And of course to Jamie Bell, who's a complete star alongside yourself in this film. And I'm also going to really embarrass you now, because there's a quote that Ben Kingsley has said about you, where he says, you're extremely intelligent, led by a combination of your head and your heart. Anything your fellow actors are fortunate to offer you in a scene, like great Wimbledon tennis, will be smashed right back at you. That's about right? Yeah. And I think there is something around your career that I think we'll recognise that when we're watching your work. There's a deep intelligence you bring to it, so maybe we'll touch base on some of that. So let's start at the beginning, though. There's a lot of talk here about the provenance of actors, where people are coming from, and how does that inform your career choices and where you go. So maybe tell us a little bit about your own early beginnings in terms of where you started in your career and what drew you to this strange profession.
Okay. Shall I sit a little bit? Oh, can I sit
think
here?
it's okay. Yeah, relax.
It's a good microphone. Really? Is that okay? Fabulous. I think I'm going to change the position of the pink pillow. Okay. Let's see. Well, I was taken to a play by my English teacher when I was in junior high, Mrs. McLaughlin, and I've been able to thank her many times publicly. Recently, actually, I went to I was raised in San Diego, pretty much, California, but I was born in the Midwest, so that makes me very honest. Sort of. Anyway, so Mrs. McLaughlin took me to a play. We went to the Old Globe Theater, which is one of our nonprofit theaters in America, and saw a couple of Shakespeare plays and thought that was pretty exciting. And that got me interested. And then I had a good high school theater teacher. She was great. She was a little bit crazy and a little bit of a genius, which is often the case, that those two go together. But she was very passionate. In fact, I was struck by that. I remember we were doing a play called Man and God, and it was the relationship between man and God, and so we were able to take scenes from different plays and musicals and put them together, so everybody got a good bit to do. And we had our first night, which had gone very well. That was very exciting. And then the second night, we did the first half, and she was very disappointed. And I remember we were backstage, and I remember her taking a table. She was telling us about how the energy was down, and the performance wasn't as good as it had been the night before.
How old were you?
Probably 15. Okay. And she was a young woman, and an actress herself, and I think and somewhat of a frustrated actress. But I remember this moment. She took the table, and she almost threw it. I mean, she picked it up and slammed it down and said, "You've got to get out there. This is the second night." And she just went on, and I remember being in awe. I thought, wow. This is really important to her. But I think I did get a little bit of a taste of that, because it is irrational, the amount that you have to care to make something good. And that's, of course, not just in my business, but in any endeavor, right? especially creative ones, it does take an irrational commitment. So that was good. So then I was doing high school drama, but I was working. I had jobs here and there, part-time jobs. And then I was working on a boat. I worked on a boat for a while. I was a cook, not very good, but I was a cook. And then I went to community college, which in America is almost free. It's not completely free. It should be, and Obama did try to make that happen, and we're still working on that. I won't say anything more. I almost did. I held myself back. The reason I'm saying this is because I sort of plodded along, and I want people to know that, especially people who are interested in whatever field. It doesn't take a kind of glamorous start to get yourself going. So I went to community college, then I went to San Francisco State and got a theater degree, and then I went to a conservatory and studied after that. And the conservatory was at a theater called the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. They also had a repertory company at that time, which was my dream, to be in a repertory company and work on classical pieces. So then I got to do that. And then I got into the acting union. So then I was a regional theater actress. At this point, I'm in San Francisco. I did a couple of years there. And I was doing Shakespeare festivals and stuff in the summer. And then I did another season at another theater in America called the Denver Center Theater Company. And then I moved to New York in hopes of trying to get other things going. Maybe if I did plays in New York, I could also do something else, perhaps.
And did you, I mean, is that, now looking back, is that an extraordinary beginning for a kind of screen actor, predominant screen actor in America now? Because it seems that way for us in a way. Like you started very much you didn't reach the screen until your late 20s, 28, late 20s. And so you were never trained in it. And I remember thinking that's quite interesting that you learned on the job.
Well, I was very intimidated by the camera, certainly. And, the people that teach, at least in my theater school, nobody that taught or worked there knew anything about cinema. And so it was always kind of a scary thing. They would always say, well, you're going to be too big. If you're on the stage and then you go do camera, then that's like, and you always put on 10 pounds. That's the other thing they always said. It's like, that sounds really awful. So I was really quite intimidated about the camera. And it took me a while. It took me a while to feel at home on a set. I was used to being on a stage and getting up on your feet and, doing the whole story from the beginning to the end, the whole lifestyle, 8 shows a week. So this whole thing about speaking quietly and having a brief scene for 2 minutes just seemed very odd. Because I didn't know, I just didn't understand it yet. So I was very lucky because then when I started, I worked with a few very good people, so I learned a lot. But it took me a while to not feel like a stage actor doing movies. And we can talk more specifically about that whole issue if you want to. But.
Yeah. And so, but the other thing, of course, with theatre to screen, because that's very much the trajectory of a lot of actors here, where they start in theatre and they end up on the screen. That actually, you are doing Shakespeare, you are doing Chekhov, you are doing these really big, wonderful, meaty, well-honed roles, especially for women. Did you feel a shift from going to that to moving into the screen? Was there a sense of, did you ever feel that tension there?
No, I know I was lucky because I did a lot of very good projects when I started working in cinema. But it's the intellectual heft of those writers. That's why it's great to study drama. That's why I still have a thing about that with actors and when you're starting out and when you're training. That's why doing theater is so great, is because you're entering the minds of these giants. And that marriage between that intellectual breadth and the emotional content, which is, of course, the thing that infuses it with life, and that's your job. So I think when you've had the chance to sort of work inside of those pieces, then it's given you a chance to at least stretch a little bit, even if you haven't quite got there. And then, so going from that to cinema it's just a different thing. The camera is a different beast, and it's the director's medium, movies.
Do you think because you've had that that intellectual breadth, the beginning of your career in terms of working with those kind of writers. Do you think you've tested your directors in a particular way? Do you think that brings a certain interrogation to the
I don't know. That's a good word. I think interrogation is the key. Questions, asking lots of questions. And that means these are sort of open-ended questions. When you're preparing, it's not as if you find the answers always, but you are asking the questions. Where does that come from? Where do I come from? Why is this? Why is this so important to me? Or more sort of nuts and bolts things about where am I from and all of the biological background. It's whatever feeds you is useful. So if something, even if it's in the Stanislavski chapter 10 book and tells you this is what you must know, if it doesn't inspire you and work for you, it's irrelevant. Studying narrative structure, yeah, I think it's good to have done that. I know that when I started movies, I would study the script and I would think, that little section in there, it doesn't quite work. It's boring or it's unclear or something. But I didn't feel it was my place to say something. I'm hired, I'm the actress. I would just sort of not really say much. And then I would watch the movie and I'd think, oh, the section of the movie is kind of boring. And maybe I was right there, and I don't know. So, I mean, I'm not saying I was always right or that I always knew, but I do think that actors are very intelligent. They can be, and you can make suggestions. You're not always right. And sometimes you don't even know quite what the problem is. That's more the case. You don't know how to solve it, but you sense maybe something is either too much or too little. Sometimes you have to fight to say less. Because the camera says so much, and I certainly have in many times said, would you mind if I don't say that? Because I don't think I really need to say that much. Could I say less? So anyway.
Okay, so let's start with, so we start in theatre. You have this conservatory background. Mm-hmm. You end up on screen. And the other thing I think is quite interesting, looking through the journey of your career, in a way there's the many stages of womanhood that I think that your career has also revealed in some really interesting ways. So let's start at the beginning, in a way. So can we roll the first clip and then we'll speak about this? What's it going to be? I rewatched The Grifters 2 weeks ago in preparation for this, and it's a remarkable film and a remarkable performance from you. So, first stage of womanhood, perhaps, the kind of the performance of the naive ingenue, who's actually definitely not that, but you realise by the time the film ends. So tell us a little bit about this role and how it came to you. And did you realise when you read the script at any point that this was going to be a career-defining moment for you?
I had met Stephen Frears, who directed it, for Dangerous Liaisons, which he made. I made another film based on the same story at the same time with Milos Forman, and I was up for both films because I was in New York working on a play. And so I met Stephen for The Girl Who Gets the Picture Written on Her Ass, and I was up for the lead in the other movie with Milos Forman because I wasn't known or anything. I was just doing a play in New York. So I met Stephen a couple of times for that part, and and then and I auditioned for Milos Forman for months and months and months. It went on for a long time, and I eventually screen tested in the dress and everything with Kevin Spacey, by the way. He and I screen tested together. It was the first time I met him. So I had met Stephen, but I wasn't in his movie, and we went to Europe as they were leaving. They came to America. They opened the movie, and it was a huge success. We then returned from making our movie, and I saw their movie. It had just opened, and our movie opened then, a year later, and it was a huge bomb, except in Finland. And so I had met Stephen. So when he was interested in the Grifters, by the way, I think somebody else turned the part down first. And I always forget, I mean to ask Stephen that. He may not remember at this point, I don't know. But I think somebody else didn't do it, or else that would never have happened. So then I met him. I remember meeting him in a hotel. Nothing untoward happened. And he asked me to do the part. And he told me to watch Gloria Grahame movies. And I remember him saying,
That's fascinating.
"Could you lighten your voice?" I remember him saying that. So it's a great book. Jim Thompson wrote the novel that it's based on, and he wrote a bunch of really good books. And there are a number that have been made into films. There's a French film called Population 180. I'm forgetting the name of it. But he wrote great American books. They were usually about, it was like there was a murder spree in the town, and it's the cop. They're great novels. They're filled with criminals and crime and fabulous motives. So we had a very good book. We had Donald Westlake adapting it into the screenplay. We rehearsed, I remember that, with Angelica. I was very nervous, and we did rehearse, though. I remember that, and made it in Los Angeles. And no, we didn't know that it was going to turn out as well as it did. You never know.
You never know.
No,
huh?
you don't know.
So this is fairly quickly followed to Postcards from the Edge, and there's a kind of a similar positioning that you have in both of those films. And there again, you had Angelica Houston in The Grifters, you have Shirley MacLaine and Meryl Streep in Postcards from the Edge. So you're already working with these titans in a way of kind of character actors. What did you learn? How did that feel, first of all? What did you learn from them? Do you remember? Was there like...
Well, on Postcards from the Edge, that was actually before, let me see. Well, it was definitely before, I think maybe I had made The Grifters, but it hadn't come out yet or something. Anyway, with Postcards from the Edge, I was doing a play in New York, and Mike Nichols, who directed Postcards from the Edge, was working on the screenplay with Carrie Fisher. It was based on her book about her life. And Mike liked to do read-throughs of the script. And so there were 4 or 5 of us who were working on plays in New York, and we would play all the parts, and then Meryl and Shirley would come in and read their parts. So we were there just to sort of fill in.
You wasn't cast at this point?
No, it was just a favor. So of course you would do it, and so we all did it, and we did a couple of those readings, and Mike worked on the script with Carrie. And then when we eventually shot it, each of us who did that, each got to have one scene. So that's how I got the one scene in Postcards from the Edge. We shot it at night, I remember, because I was very nervous, of course. It was Meryl Streep, oh my God. And it was nighttime, and I remember there was a big crane. There was a big crane shot, and so you're out sort of in the middle of a street. There's lots of extras. You don't know where the director is or where anybody else is. There's Meryl and me, and there's a camera floating around over there. And so we did a couple of run-throughs, and then after one of those, they said, "Cut." And I thought, I knew enough to know cut means they have rolled. And I didn't know. So then I thought, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Oh my God, I've just done a scene with Meryl Streep, and I thought we were rehearsing, and we weren't. We were actually doing it. But then, of course, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter, which is what I learned. I remember watching her and thinking, God, she does something different every time. And I remember thinking, oh, but I love that thing she did the last time, when she did that little, and now she's not doing that. That's interesting. I liked it when she did that. But of course, she knew they already had that, so she knew that she didn't have to do the same thing. And yeah, no, but I do remember going back to my trailer and sitting there and thinking, oh my God, I just shot a scene with Meryl Streep and I didn't know they were rolling. That's impossible.
And then you have to wait ages to see it, right? That's the problem
And I
with
think
film.
part of it is in it.
Right.
Because I watch it and I think, oh yeah, I think that's the one that and I was thinking, yeah, it's not being recorded, so I'm going to try this thing with the stick and in my mouth and you know, whatever. Yeah. It's not very interesting. That's what happened. It was one day.
First of three with Mike Nichols, though. So, how did that relationship grow? He kept calling you up.
Yes. Well, he was really amazing guy and very, very bright. He was a great audience. You know, that's the thing about a lot of good directors. They're just great audiences. They just watch you and they just make you feel so good. They make you feel, oh my God, look what you're doing. He was very enthusiastic and funny, of course. He's famously funny. He could be tough. He was never tough to me, but he could be tough. And I do remember when we were working on a movie that we did called Regarding Henry with Harrison Ford, and I remember showing up. Again, there I am, very nervous. And I remember both Harrison and Mike talking about how nervous they were. And I thought, wait, you're Mike Nichols. You're nervous. So that was, of course, a great gift. So I try to talk about that when I talk to students or whomever, that, insecurity, whatever you want to call it, fear, that trepidation that you have when you're doing something is quite normal. It's not something that you want to get rid of. You have to learn how to handle it. You learn to use it. You learn to, it changes as you get older, but it never completely goes away, and I don't think we really want it to. So it's something that one has to not cultivate, but at least cultivate a healthy relationship to.
Make it a friend in a way,
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the next graduation, the next step on the womanhood ladder, which is the wife and the partner. So let's roll the next clip, please, and we'll speak a little bit about that. It's kind of really wonderful to see those two clips mirrored, actually, because obviously they end in almost the same shot. But this is a very different woman we're presented with in this piece compared to the Grifters. It's an extraordinary piece of work. Sam Mendes, obviously a theatre director, so it comes from a very similar tradition. Tell us a little bit about, again, how this landmark film really came to you, and what was your experience of working with him, particularly because of both of your theatrical traditions and backgrounds?
Well, there was an excellent script and recognized to be such. It was a really good script by Alan Ball, and DreamWorks, which was this company that Steven Spielberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg had started, and David Geffen, were wise enough to hire Sam Mendes. And Sam had already become a boy wonder in the theater in London, but he hadn't made a movie. So he wanted me to do it, and he wanted Kevin Spacey to do it. And we were both doing plays, oddly enough. And I had, it was a play at a regional theater in LA, and so one has to schedule that way in advance. So you just have to commit, and no matter what, you're doing that. And so I couldn't move the dates, and it was conflicting. And Kevin was doing Iceman Cometh on Broadway, so I remember I think we had to do it earlier. I don't remember exactly how it went, but we had to change the dates. And I remember meeting with Sam and thinking that he had this extraordinary combination of self-assurance, but not arrogant, just very calm and very clear. And we got together and rehearsed. We rehearsed for about 5 days, much more like a play. What does that mean? It just means every person is honored, and every character, and the way we talk to each other. We talked a lot about background and history. We read through things, and we probably improvised some. We improvised some when we made the movie as well. I'm realizing as I'm watching that, some of that when I was in the house and stuff, I was improvising some of that. We didn't improvise a lot in the movie, but we did some. I remember we shot one of the scenes the first day or two, and Sam decided they weren't right. And he went to the company, and a couple of days shooting, as you probably know, is very, very expensive. And so he went to them and said, I don't think this is right. I need to do it again. And luckily, of course, I thought it was because of me, but I don't think it was. But anyway, he wasn't pleased with the setting. We ended up doing it differently in another location in a different way. So I thought that was quite a credit to him, that he had the guts to say, I didn't get it right. That takes a lot of courage. And the script, again, the material was very good, because the material teetered on what was very serious and what was very funny all the time. And of course, as an actor, you don't really have to worry about that. You just play the truth of it as best you can, and then the result of it isn't up to you. And sometimes the movie would get laughs, and sometimes people would be very quiet and serious. I remember watching screenings with different crowds, and there would be very different reactions, which is wonderful. So it was a great cast, and Kevin was a wonderful partner. Thora Birch, who I just saw again recently, played my daughter. She was wonderful in the movie. So yeah, that was special.
There's a real sort of connection of ensemble casting, great ensemble casting in your films. It's going back to the Ben Kingsley. There is like watching great tennis matches. You know, most people. Is that important for you? And now you choose. Are you often looking at who's going to be around you? Is that part of your choice?
I guess it's a great luxury when you can do that. Sometimes you can't, but if you can, it's a great luxury. And now it's more and more important, because it's just the process of connecting to each other that's the real joy, and the process of trying to make something and find a moment together that would hopefully move somebody in a theater down the road. I mean, I'm a great lover of movies. I love to watch movies. I mean, on the plane here, I watched 2 movies, and I was sobbing in my seat.
What did you watch?
I watched The Lovers, which is this small movie. Have you?
I'm seeing on Saturday.
Oh, okay, so it's Tracy Letts and Deborah Winger. Mm-hmm. I think it came out in America this year, earlier this year. Yeah, it might be another one.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving anything away. I'll just tell you the very beginning. So they're married, and they're each having an affair. And that's kind of where the movie starts. And I'd read something about it that was complimentary, and then I watched it, and I was like, oh, wow. And now, because there's so many films, there's so much content, there's so much television, none of us can keep up, can we? There's too much to watch. It's like you can become paralyzed by opportunity. It's like, So when you're trapped on a plane, it's kind of great, because then it's like, well, there's only this many. So I watched, and I'd heard that was good, and it was excellent. It wasn't just good, it was great. And then I watched 12 Years a Slave again, and thought, wow, what an important film, and what an important film to rewatch. So, yeah.
Are there directors, are they kind of, talking about someone like Steve McQueen, are there kind of directors that you look at and you think, God, I'd love to work with that person?
Absolutely, yeah, and especially...
You can pitch here, Annette.
Okay. No, for sure. And, you know, in movies, it's their medium. You're giving your performance to them. So yeah, it's everything.
Okay, so we've got 2 more clips, and I'm aware of time. So let's roll the next clip, next stage of life. Let's roll that one. So, and then, but you're so funny. That's the thing. And I think what's wonderful, even the kind of reverse shots and the responses, it's all in your facial expression in terms of your comic timing. Is that something, do you love to play kind of that? Do you like to play comic roles? Do you like to play those comedy scenes? Is that?
Well, yeah, and of course the trick is that it's totally serious. That's the important part. There's this old-fashioned book. I call it old-fashioned. I don't even know exactly when it was written, but I remember finding it in acting school, and there's a kind of like very pretentious-looking lady on the cover. She's got like a big. She looks like maybe she's dressed out of Oscar Wilde or something, and the book is called The Craft of Comedy, and she wrote the book. And it's a great book. And basically all she says is, you must play it with absolute serious conviction. And that's her theme. And she's right.
Yeah. And this particular role is like that.
Yeah.
You're the straight, literally the kind of, excuse the pun, but the straight woman in the kind of, the Julianne Moore's playing kind of this, and you're the one who holds it all together, and yet you hold the comedy in throughout this film, I think.
Yeah. No, it was really fun. And the writing's very good. So unless the writing is good, we're just interpreters.
Yeah.
So the writing is very good in that script. And Josh was very good.
Really
Josh,
good.
who played the scene, yeah.
And you know,
you.
and again, in terms of the, it's kind of crude, but in terms of these many faces of womanhood, right? In terms of looking at, the Maya Langtry character in the Grifters and this one here, that you've kind of embraced a whole range of personas, I think, when you look through. Are you kind of aware of that? Is that something that attracts you to a role? Do you think, God, I've never done this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I want to try to find something that's completely off in another universe that I haven't done. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the kind of joy of being an audience member of your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, you get to shapeshift with you. Okay, talking of the last shapeshifting we're going to do, if we roll the last clip, please. If anybody would have said to me that Annette Bening and Jamie Bell are going to do a film together as lovers, and it's going to be some of the greatest theatre you've seen on screen in years, I just kind of wouldn't have believed them. But yeah, film stars don't die in Liverpool. This is the new film that you're in. Interesting, you said Maya Langtry character in The Grifters. You were asked to look at Gloria Grahame films, and now you are playing Gloria Grahame at this time in your life. But a really daunting proposition, presumably, is to play an amazing screen siren, effectively. So what was your approach to this? How did you, when you were offered this, what were your kind of thoughts, and how did you approach the work, I suppose?
Well, it's based on a book that Peter Turner, who Jamie Bell plays, wrote about his relationship with Gloria Grahame. And Barbara Broccoli, one of our producers, Colin Vance is our other producer, but Barbara had known Peter Turner and Gloria as well. She'd known Peter for a long time, and then when Peter and Gloria were having their relationship, she knew them. So the book, Peter wrote the book at the end of the relationship, and it had a long history of trying to get made. Barbara, both Colin and Barbara had been interested in the book. Barbara finally had the rights to the book. And we had talked about it many, many years ago when we had first become friends, Barbara and I. And so there was this beautiful book that was always out there kind of floating, waiting to be made. So then we finally did it. The book is the inspiration because of Peter. Peter's a very, very special man, and his love of Gloria and his appreciation of her. And then the events that happened around them is what makes the story so special. She was a film noir icon. She was a femme fatale. But of course, she was also a real-life person who had a very complicated life. And she was here in England doing plays because she couldn't get any other work. I mean, she was really struggling to make a living. And she came here to do plays, and she met Peter, who was from Liverpool. from this beautiful family. And they fell in love, and his family also embraced Gloria. And so we spoke a lot to Peter. There was a lot of ways of studying Gloria, watching her movies. She made a lot of great movies. She made some not-so-great movies, just like all of us. So that was really a treat. And we worked on the script. We had a wonderful screenwriter who, I mean, he wrote the script, but we were able to work a bit before we were shooting. So we really, everyone involved were very, very committed to this eccentric story. And Paul McGuigan, the director, kind of pulled us all together. And it has its own kind of nature. I'm really proud of the movie. It's very unusual. There's nothing like it. I like it very much.
How do you, so you were really involved in this more than, it sounds like more than most films that you've been involved with as an actress in terms of, helping the film come to life. And obviously every character you play, there's going to be some personal resonance. There's something that's going to touch you, I guess, personally as a human being. So what was it about Gloria Grahame, do you think, for you? That was there anything about her particularly? Did you think, God, I really understand this woman? And if so, what part of her was it that you understood?
Well, I hope so. I don't want to be presumptuous because people have to see the movie and see what resonates with them. But women, the thing that we are all interested in now, I think we as actresses, I guess to say, or filmmakers, and all of us who are trying to make these stories, is that it used to be that women were so often portrayed in a kind of cliched way. Good, bad, good girl, bad girl. Gloria played a lot of bad girls. Good mommy, bad mommy. There's all kinds of sort of stereotypes, right? In all of their iterations. And now it's beginning, and there's always been movies that transcended that. It's not every film, but by and large. So now we're coming into a time where we see more and more subtlety, and so it's always the kind of the flaws in people that interest me. What's heroic? Yes, absolutely, and she was heroic. She was tough. She was a survivor. She was fierce. She had a lot of scandal and bad things that happened to her that she had to overcome. And she was also, she had her flaws. She was a normal human being. And that's the thing that interests me, is not why people are perfect or, unlike us, but what makes them like us. And don't you want that when you see a movie? I do when I go to see a movie and I think, oh, that moment of indecision, or that moment of regret, or that moment where you do the right thing and you do step up. And, sometimes we do the right thing, but we don't always do the right thing. And in issues of love, Peter's ability to investigate this relationship in his book is what's very beautiful. Because I feel like, for me, maybe for other people, you've had a love affair at some point that always is a bit of a mystery to you. And it's the way it can consume you. And then sometimes there's an unsatisfying ending, but nonetheless it lives inside of you. And so Peter really was writing about that, and to me that's very universal. And the book goes from the past and the present. He doesn't tell you when you're in the past and when you're in the present. I just think it's very artful. And so that, to me, is kind of what transcends the whole thing, the specifics of them, who Peter was, who she was, that whole kind of notion of love, and how those kinds of experiences nothing ever really touches. Nothing else ever touches. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Film really captures that. Thank you. I think we've got a few minutes for a couple of questions. So, there's one down here.
That's a very good question. Yes. It can be very, I don't know how to answer that in a brief way or in a helpful way. I want to be helpful. I don't think you get any points for destroying your own psyche to find a moment. although some of us sort of like to believe that. I remember being in a college play, and I remember during the curtain call, I was crying. And I remember thinking, that's fantastic. I'm so overcome. I'm still overcome. But that's just, naivete. So, yeah. So I don't know. If there was a way to fake everything, I would do it. I haven't figured it out. Now, of course, you are faking because you aren't that person, and that situation that you're in is not real. Right? Right. So what is that? You're lending yourself to something. When I did a play for a year that was very emotionally demanding, and I remember every morning literally waking up, and my eyes would open, and the first thing that would come to my mind is I have to hit those moments in the play, and if it was a 2-show day, I have to hit those moments twice. Oh boy, I don't know how to describe it. It's changed over the years for me, that process. It becomes very lonely at a certain moment, because when you're talking about it, or when you're preparing, or when you're rehearsing, you're with everybody else, but then, especially on the camera, well, it's on the stage too, but with a camera, it's just you. And they say, okay, quiet, 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 everyone. Okay, you ready? Oh, yeah. Wait, I signed up for this. I'm lucky to be doing this. No one's making me do this. This is what I want to be doing. Now, there's that. But then there's also something else, which is, if you prepare well, which means you're using your intellect to feed your unconscious. That's what Stanislavski basically sort of tried to articulate, and that's what all modern acting is based on, or his ideas, right? It's the conscious way to the unconscious. So it's that deep well that we want to access, which is not an intellectual process. At least it isn't for me. I'm just talking about myself. I'm sure many other people have different ways of describing this. So there is that, and there's a certain amount of trust in yourself that you have to cultivate. But when you do a lot of research and work and thinking and daydreaming and listening to music and paintings or talking to people or whatever it is that is helpful to you, then it's sort of like jumping off a cliff. And sometimes things work out, and you find something, and it's hard to know, it's very hard to know sometimes if you found something very interesting. So that's what I was thinking about, actually, when you were talking and you were being very complimentary and you were being very nice to me about my work and everything. It's so funny because this experience and this circumstance has so nothing to do with the process. The process is very messy. You're filled with, I don't know, was that it? Maybe? Should we do it again? Oh, wait, there's no time? Okay. Yes, fine. Oh, God, I'm tired. Or, okay, I'm going to plan it I have to do that scene at 11 a.m. Okay, perfect. It's on the schedule. I'll have coffee first, and then I'll wait to have coffee until 10:45. And you have these ways of sort of trying to fool yourself and the moment, and then it's like, sorry, we're going to wait till after lunch, or we have to do the scene again. That's happened to me too with difficult scenes. So it's helpful for me to admit that I'm afraid. I do that now a lot. I used to think, I shouldn't be afraid, or I don't want to be afraid. Now I literally will just sit and I'll think to myself, I'm so frightened. I'm so frightened right now. Does that make sense? Is that insane? Don't tell me.
Quite the opposite.
I don't know if that was of any help, if that was completely incoherent. You know what? My mother is a great singer. My parents are Shirley and Grant. They are 91 and 88, and they just celebrated their 67th wedding anniversary. And my mother has always sung. She was a voice major in college, and when we would have, like PTA meetings, like parent-teacher meetings at the school, she would be the mom that would come in and, ooh, and we would sit in the front row and plug our ears. So rude. We were horrible. But she was always in choral groups, and she's always sung, and she actually got a job for many years. She's not a Christian Scientist, but the Christian Science Church, at least in the US, they actually hire soloists to come in and sing at their services. So she was always very proud of that. She was a paid church soloist. She was also in the choir and in her regular church. Anyway, so my mom's got a great voice. I have sung, but my voice is not great. It's like okay. Yeah, and I've taken lots of lessons. And my daughter has a great singing voice, and I keep saying to her, oh my God, that's such an asset. It's such an asset. So I'm okay, I'm not great. Well, it's all about that. It's all about interacting, when you've been trained in plays, you think of it more that way. I have worked with great movie actors who they understand the camera, and to a degree, some of them, they know that it doesn't, especially if the camera's just on them, it's a close-up, let's say, you're not in the shot, it's just them, that it doesn't really matter what anyone else is doing, right? Because it doesn't, actually. But those of us who are, trying to support each other, we're busy off camera acting up a storm, trying to feed them and help them. And actually, I think it's okay to say this. I did have an experience with Robert De Niro, and I was, starting out, and he was the veteran, and I was the, person who didn't know very much. Anyway, I was playing his wife, of course. Nobody talked about our age difference on that movie. Anyway, so we have this fight. And are you recording that with that? Is that what you're doing? Oh. Yes, I am. Sorry. Okay. Maybe I won't tell that story. I just remembered there's lots of cameras here. No, it's not a bad story. It's just that no, he was quite right. So the camera was on him. We were having this big fight, and I think they showed me having my side of it, and the camera's on him. And so he's doing his scene, and I'm off camera. And of course, I'm with Robert De Niro. I'm trying to give him everything I could. And he said, could you turn around? I was distracting him. I was so embarrassed. I have to admit, I was like, oh, yeah, sorry. I'm sure he was right. He was like, so in other words, he knew what he needed to do. He didn't need that. And that was, he's a great actor. He knows what he needs. So, I don't know. I've worked with a lot of really great people. Vanessa Redgrave is kind of up there on the list, I would say, and Vanessa is in our movie, Film Stars, and I also happen to have just made another movie with her. I just finished. So watching her is pretty incredible. And definitely, when we were shooting Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, she had one day off. She was doing a play. She had 8 shows a week, and she came to us on a Sunday to shoot the scene. We were all in awe. And I stood there, and I thought, oh, my God. I'm acting with Vanessa Redgrave. I can't believe this is happening. I was really pinching myself. And then when we worked quite a bit more, what I noticed is her penetration of her questions and her ability to really question, why? Why am I doing this? Why does this make sense? Why would I say this? And it forces everyone to sort of, well, yeah, why are we? Yeah, what is this? Why is this important? And some simple thing, like you're asked to come into a room, And the director says, okay, you two, you come in and you stand over there. And so it's your job to make it look real, because that's what he wants you to do. But you do it, and it's like fake. You can feel it, right? There's no, let's just be blunt. It's phony. And so it's your job to fix that, right? They can't fix it for you. You have to, that's why you're doing what you do. And I remember there's a moment where we were going into this room, we were coming into, it was awkward. It's like we go through this door, and how do we do that? And does the door close? And it becomes all about those silly things. And she said that just, this isn't truthful. And just the way she said that, I thought, yes. She was right. And she could feel it. So she knew that she had to that we had to work on that. Otherwise it would look fake. And hopefully that's not in the movie. If it's in the movie and you think, oh, there's that fake moment. That's what she was talking about. The way they come through that door, I don't believe it. No, she's great, and the moments, she's now 80-something, and the moments, I'm watching her, I'm acting with her, but I'm also watching her, and I'm thinking, those moments happen. It's like, oh my God, there it is. There's that thing, and she's doing it right in front of me. I'm watching it. It's very exciting. But everyone's so very different, the way they work, and that's what's fun, is the difference between people.
Also, I think we're going to have to close there. I did say 2 questions, and I'm keeping to my promise. But what I loved about that ending, in a way, is one of the questions that I had, which is, in a way, many people are looking up to you now in terms of that learning, in terms of what do you bring to a scene to make it truthful. And it's really, one of the questions I had is, are you still learning? Do you still feel like there are moments? So it's wonderful to know that you're
always
having that still engagement.
Oh, absolutely. No, more than ever. I feel like I can really learn now, because I went to acting school and I didn't know anything. So when I went to acting school, I really needed to go. I mean, I was, I didn't go to plays. When I did a lot of the classics, I'd never seen them. So they were new plays to me. Romeo and Juliet was a new play. But that's important, and that's true. And each generation, as they come up, that's true for them. But then, no, the learning becomes better because you're more and more free the older you get. And you begin to forget all of the things that, you forget everything that you've been taught. And that's when you can really be open. And, you think, well, who cares, right? What's the worst that can happen? It's bad.
Right.
All right, well, so you're bad. But so you feel actually more free as you get older, and you learn more. Yeah.
Hear to that. Miss Annette Bening, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.